counter.
It feels very
Hello and welcome to the Unwanted Opinion podcast, the show in which me and my friends give our unwanted opinion on all things film. My name is Lewis and I'm joined for the first time in a long time by my good friend Kyle.
I'm back, I'm alive.
He's back, he's alive. And Gonthalo.
Hey.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Not bad. I'm really happy that Kyle's back.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you. I know
yes,
it's-
at last.
I make
I'm
a
so
return.
much
I like to
something.
pop in. I'm like
No,
Phil
the show's
Coulson.
got... No, seriously, the show's gone off the rails. I mean, have you listened to the last episode? It's just
I-
dead air for
I-
like 20
no,
minutes.
no,
Me and
I,
Kyle just don't know how to speak to each other. It's
I
just terrible.
listened to the last episode,
Yeah.
and mainly I listened because I started watching that Window Wild, and I was like, oh, I want to know Gonzalo's opinion.
Yeah.
So, and I loved your review about it, but I loved the fact that I was just listening to it, and I just in my head I was going, those two are rambling, and then immediately you guys were like, and this was where Kyle would yell at us, and I was like, they know me too well, because I was like, you guys are rambling too much here. You need to
Kyle
reel
would've
it in,
stopped it.
boys.
Heck
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
heck yeah. My
know.
girlfriend could only get 20 minutes into that. She was like, you guys talk too long. I'm like, yeah.
That's
You had a lot to say about Wendell and Wild. You had a lot to say. I kept calling it Wendell and Wise. You corrected
Yes,
me, and I
yes.
still kept calling it Wendell and Wise.
I just think
It was
you
terrible.
kept saying it. I just ignored it. I was like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
in post, it's fine. And then
I didn't.
The release version was like, Wendell and Wise. Wise.
I was like, no. This is the name of the goddamn film. I'm not changing it. That's it. It's not Wild. It's, it's
We'll
the
have
name
to
of the
call
goddamn film.
Netflix to change the name. Just you know.
Yes.
I'd
Also,
watched
I
20
fucked up
minutes
because
of it.
I believe I called the protagonist Wendell several times, but Wendell is one of the demon names. I don't remember what the fucking protagonist is
Yeah.
called. So
Jesus.
I fucked
It's
up, you know.
It's
Yeah.
amateur with it, Kyle. It's amateur. But anyway,
Okay,
on
I'm
today's
back.
show.
Everything's good.
On today's show, since Black Panther 2 is opening up very, very soon, we thought it'd be the best time to discuss Ryan Coogler and actually ask ourselves what is his best film. Currently, he's only made 3, well, technically 4 Black Panther 2, but we haven't seen that. But he's only really made 3 feature films to date, and we thought we'd go through them, talk about them, and then finally decide which one we consider the best. Plus, we also have reviews for a new creepy horror thriller Watcher and the remake of the iconic Japanese film Ikiru, the Western remake named Living with Bill Nye. So that will be all on today's show. You guys ready to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're ready to
Yeah.
answer
I want to point
intro
out,
question.
I was like, maybe after a few weeks I'll come in with a review, and I was like, right, I need to limit myself, and I was like,
Yes.
Enola Holmes 2. I made it 20 minutes, and I went, nah,
really?
it's not worth it.
Well, there's your quick fire review, guys. Like and subscribe. That's us for today. And not all the homes too. Not
Henry
worth it.
Henry
Alright.
Cavill's bitching it as well.
No,
It's just every franchise.
Right. So anyway, yeah, let's start with Ryan Coogler's first feature film. Fruitvale Station came out in 2013. Obviously, he made a bunch of short films before this, leading up to this film, starring Michael B. Jordan, and obviously follows the story of Oscar Grant III, who's a 22-year-old black man who was shot and killed by the police on New Year's Day 2009. And it kind of, this is 2007. No, it was New Year's Day
2009.
Oh,
2009,
sorry,
2009.
2007
Yeah.
was the flashback. My bad. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
2007 is flashback.
Um,
2008, yeah.
New Year's Day 2009 is when he passed away. Well, shot and then he passed away a bit later. And what was I saying? Oh yeah,
Spoilers.
it was written and directed by Ryan Coogler, his first feature film, and yeah, this is quite a really effective, amazing kind of first debut film, like a really emotionally heart-wrenching first film from the director.
It's so
It's
weird.
fucking
So,
brilliant.
see this film, right? I went into it, and I was kind of like, so, obviously, well, spoilers, but everybody, it's a true event.
Yes.
But the first scene, I think, is actual footage from the incident.
Yes.
Because
Yes, it
now,
shows you what happened.
all the
yeah.
time, obviously this was 2009, so it was kind of rudimentary smartphone recording, so it's not the best quality in the world.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Right, so this is a true event, because I didn't really actually know
Yeah,
going
you
in. I
didn't
was just
know.
kind of like, well, obviously, because I this was the last one of the 3 for me to watch, and obviously the other
Okay.
2 are
Yeah.
very fictional based. So I was a bit like
franchise and fictional.
yeah,
based,
I
yes.
just kind of assumed that this would be another kind of
Yeah.
story or franchise, and I was like, oh right, okay, this is an actual event. I was like, right, let's see where it goes.
Mhm.
And it is so amazing that he does something so unique in making. I thought of it as like it. The first thing that kind of jumped to me was when somebody first described. I think it was maybe you, Lewis, who first described
Right.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where
Yeah.
you said it's actually like a nothing film. It's just like you're following somebody and like
you're
their
following
lives.
the story, and it's a film about it follows his last day on Earth pretty much,
Ah.
which is New Year's Eve, and it follows kind of just his sort of just his daily struggles and of him trying to actually get his life back on track after coming out of prison, and his relationship with his daughter, his girlfriend, his mum. Just really human and a simple story of just Oscar's last day. What do you think of the film, Gonzalo?
This was first of all, fuck you for making me watch this film. This was absolutely a heart-wrenching experience.
That wasn't a bad criticism of anyone listening. It's not, I don't think it's not a bad film.
No, it's an amazing film, but that's the issue, that it's incredibly effective. The thing about this film is that I've talked about this when we talked about the last Jordan Peele movie, and I talked about how incredible it was that during the masterful suspense. I think this film takes the idea of suspense to a whole new level, because like Kyle said, it presents you with the event, that the ending of this man's life right as you start. That's after you hear the voices of the protagonist and his girlfriend talking, you go straight away to this event. It breaks up this relationship, this family, this connection, the same way his death broke up that family and that connection, and it just fucking throws it at you. And from then on, the entire film is you waiting for this to happen. It's you hoping that you don't form a connection with these people, so you don't get destroyed when it happens, because you know it's coming. You know it's happening. Every single time he gets one step closer to the moment that you know he's going to die. And yet, it manages to pull you in and drive you and fucking makes you connect with these people in such an intimate way that by the moment it happens, even though you're begging to detach yourself from the situation, you have no choice but to like be absolutely emotionally destroyed. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
It's one of these things. It's sort of strange how, like, it's a blend of like non-fiction and fiction to an extent where you've seen like the Ryan Coogler just goes straight up. This is how this film's going to end, guys.
Yeah.
Like, here it is. Here we go.
Really
straight
up.
And even when you're pulled into the story and just pulled into the daily life of Oscar, you're sort of trying to. You kind of forget that that's where this is going, and also you're trying to also convince yourself that that's not how it's going to end. There's going to be another way out, but there obviously can't be. This is what happened. And I think what's also really effective is obviously, I mean, Michael B. Jordan's one of the best working actors today.
Oh yeah.
This film just flexes his talents even more. I mean, it was a great
fucking brilliant.
kind of one of his kind of first.
Everyone.
Kind of him coming into
brilliant.
the spotlight in this sort of time period in like around 2013. And it's just what I really like is that it's very honest with the portrayal of Oscar Grant. Like he's a very, very flawed human being, and he has a lot of problems and has done a lot. Not done a lot of great things.
Yeah.
And that's what also, because that's such, just makes him such a fully three-dimensional being. And he's not a character; he's a real person.
Yeah.
Even though you're watching a fictionalized account of his
and
life.
Also the reminder at the start that what you're watching is something that actually happened gives it another layer of tragedy to what you're watching, because it's really easy to feel a level of detachment from characters when you know they're fictionalized. Yeah. But the movie keeps reminding you, hey, this actually happened. And that is like another level of like just fucking emotionally horrible, just gut-wrenching feeling that you carry with you through the film. And like you said, the fact that the main character is so flawed and so human. It's a person who's made mistakes. It's a person that we don't know if he survived, if he would, actually keep to his word and change as he seems to be doing. Like this New Year's, he's trying to take that chance to like move forward and try to be a better dad and a better boyfriend. And we see all this promise, and whether that promise was fulfilled or not.
Yeah.
The fact that the chance to try was taken away from him.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what really makes you feel like that incredible, sadness when it actually happens. That anger, that injustice. It completely puts you in their shoes, and it happened to me as well. I don't know if you've watched the show, but there's this fantasy horror called Lovecraft Country. Sorry,
I've not seen that. I know it's on Netflix. I know I need to catch it. Yeah.
It's really good, and it does something really effective, and it's that it makes a horror movie out of just being a black person in America.
Yeah.
And I think this movie does it as well, because at every single scene, whenever he's driving, whenever things like at the start, his mom urges him to get his his hands-free cell phone thing, and you're like, why is she so worried about it? And then you're like, oh fuck yeah, because any reason is a reason to stop him. Anything that he does wrong, any little mistake that he makes, is going to be a reason that could cost him his life.
Yeah,
and you
absolutely.
keep having that tight tension at every second during this film. It's absolutely incredible, because as a white guy from freaking Spain, I've never had this relationship with like the law or the authority around me, and it really manages to put you in that place. So it doesn't only like, it's not only horror to like the event that it ends up happening, but it's the constant dread of just existing in a world where like this is just your reality. You're constantly being chased,
And this is the black experience, and being a black man in America is something that's obviously very important to Ryan Coogler and Ryan Coogler's films, especially going forward as well, as we'll talk about Creed and Black Panther. But let's talk about the actual incident, because we haven't really said it. If you don't know about Oscar Grant, he was shot and killed by the police on New Year's Day, because of just a misunderstanding that it was completely out of his control, and he was
barely
just sort
a
of
reason.
Yeah, barely a reason, and of course, police brutality in America, and especially against black people, is this is something that's obviously been a very important, integral part of like pop history for decades now. It's
still going on.
It's still a sad reality that still happens and will continue to happen, and it seems like no matter what does happen with protests and movements and political speak, it's something that will probably never change, and it's a very, very tragic.
Done about it, and it doesn't seem like there's nothing being done about it.
Nothing will get done about it. And I think that what this film does, and what the actual real life event did, is that actually was a really important cornerstone for the Black Lives Matter movement going forward. You kind of see it at the credits at the end of this film. It shows you real life footage of like people outside Fruitvale Station on I think New Year's Day 2015 or 2013.
It was like the 5-year anniversary. So whatever,
5-year anniversary. Thank you.
It'd been New Year's Eve 2013 or something like that.
Of people protesting about it, and even it tells you at the end that the police officer that shot and killed him only got like 11 months in jail, and it's just
that was quite.
Yep.
You're watching the event unfold, right?
Yeah.
And a part of me, was almost like not screaming at the screen, but because the thing is, it's so justified to be so angry in that scenario, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Oscar Grant's character, there's been an incident on the train. There's been a fight, and the police or the train police, whatever kind of exactly what they were, they get called out, and about 4 or 5 black guys get pulled off the train, right?
Yeah.
And there's also a horrific point where his girlfriend is split from them, and she's in this constant state of not knowing what's happening. Hearing things, and there's horrific phone calls. But then you have scenes where they're all just yelling at the cops, and I couldn't help but almost being like yelling, just oh my god, like it's. But then you're sitting there going, you are so justified to be so angry and yelling.
Yeah.
But then I'm sitting here just going, I want, because you were saying, Goodfellow, by that point, I was emotionally attached to the character. I wanted him to make out of it. So I'm like yelling, going, just be quiet for 5 minutes, and then the life will continue. But then it's just, and I mean,
I
the
feel like
way
the
it
mother
happens
character.
is so blunt. It's just
Oh
so
god,
like
it's horrifying. Yeah.
it's so quick. 'Cause I mean, to try avoid being so graphic, he's held down while it happens.
He's shot on the back.
Like I wasn't fully aware because obviously the footage at the start, you're not getting a really clear idea of
you don't
the
know
incident.
how. Yeah.
First of
So
all,
when-
he's being held down in a way that I don't know if at this point in time was that graphic, like that imagery really evoked.
What, like the knee in the
what it
neck
does
sort
now.
of thing.
Yeah, 'cause,
yeah.
like we have had issues since then where men
Yes.
have been like black men have been murdered by police by holding them down the way this man was holding him down.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I generally didn't forgot the gun was even a thing at that point. I thought he was going to be strangled to death by this
Yeah.
police officer, and then on top of that, he's shot from the back.
It was just honestly, like I was saying, I was just up until the moment it happened, I was a sliver of hope was still in me,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think just shows
How effective
like
it is.
how effective Ryan Coogler was in making this
Yeah.
film. And I mean, like
That's-
when I was watching this film, there was a specific shot earlier on where when kind of Grant and I mean obviously I like you guys say earlier, I think one of the best parts was showing that he was not a perfect human. It's literally in my notes that was one of the key factors for me. But at one point where he takes it's like the big bump of weed that he goes and he's chucking it in the water. There's a lovely wee scene of Michael B. Jordan just sitting on the rocks, staring out into the water, and just clearly contemplating his life. And just for a moment, you're just kind of stuck there. And I was like, I don't know why, but it just gripped me. And I was like,
Yeah, it
I mean, I
holds
think-
you in that moment.
I think so much-
the vastness of possibilities ahead of him. Like
Yeah.
he could do anything with his life right now. He could change. He could grow. He could go back. Like it's just he's presented with this ocean of possibilities, and then it gets taken away.
Yeah. Just and he's 22, younger than us. It's quite
that
horrible to think
I mean,
about.
I didn't know that until afterwards, because obviously
Mhm.
you're looking at Michael B. Jordan, you're like, late 20s, early 30s,
Yeah.
and then I was like 20. I was
Yeah. It's horrible.
unbelievably shocked.
Yeah. But I also think a lot of it comes down to the way Coogler directs this film and the actual look of the film. Like, it's really raw. Like, it looks so real, and it's something, obviously... With Creed, it looks a bit more, Hollywood, and then especially with Black Panther, visually, it doesn't look anywhere near as raw or real.
I was about to say,
but-
where are you going with that?
I know. But because of that really, like, down-to-earth and such a natural aesthetic and look to the film, like, even, like... There's this scene, the scene where he goes to his mum's birthday and they're
Yes,
basically
and they're
just serving up the dinner, and so he goes to sit down with, I think it's like his uncles or something,
Yeah.
and then obviously the women are in like his mum and his grandmother and his girlfriend are in the kitchen, they're serving up the dinner, and there's something, and his daughter, and there's something so. It's really hard to do, and because the whole scene and the way it's shot and the audio is so natural, just like the background talking and stuff like that, and the way it just looks, all the actors are performing, it just feels so. It's kind of uncanny how real that looks. Like they're not. It doesn't feel like anyone's acting that
it's
scene.
just like they're having a dinner.
Feels like it feels like a moment from your life, like a
Mm-hmm.
segment from your life was just taken and put into film,
Yeah.
and the way the choice of tightening that camera as much as Coogler does, like he does, like when they arrive, you get a couple of like long shots of like the scene, so you can understand the layout. But at that moment, where like it's like for a second their worries fade away, and you get tied into their world, their celebration, their connection. They're talking about the mother's talking about the past. She's talking about how like he used to do that when he was your age and stuff like that, and the uncles are chattering and like talking about sports and stuff, and you just get those really tight close-ups with that very like shallow depth of focus, and it just like pulls you into this like magical raw moment, and you hear the voices and the clankering of the dishes. You barely follow the conversation that's going on,
I know.
but it just evokes this feeling of like closeness and homeliness and safety, And
there's also that sort of same feeling of like momentary, very brief sort of bliss is like when he picks up his daughter from nursery, and it's all just so happy he's playing with her, and this there's slow motion race. It's just such a really tender and beautiful film in general. And within 80 minutes, what Coogler managed to pack in is just like this wholly human, story that also manages to encompass a horrible reality, a horrible political and like, well, not even, I don't even consider it political. It's just this horrible reality of
human.
you know, having this whole horrible like racial, you know, what's it called? I've completely forgotten the word. Oppression. That's it.
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oppression. That's so like immovable and just a part of not just American society, the global society. It's a global issue, but just like it's so intrinsic that all this fun and just life and joy and someone just enjoying New Year's Eve is within the click of a finger. It's all gone.
And you have
and
like
really
that dichotomy within him as well. Like you see it with his friends very well, and I think the mother character's really good at portraying that. Like you said, Kyle, you had that like you wanted to scream at them when that was happening and stuff. And I feel like it's really interesting the way they do it, because you have the mother character who has been through this and has lived through a lot of this. You can see it in her eyes that like this is nothing new. The way she talks to her son in the flashback when he's in prison, and like she understands this oppression in a way that's internalized to the point where like when her son gets shot by the people who are meant to be protecting them, she's at the hospital telling his friends to calm down and shut up and be quiet and not to protest. Like, even at that moment where everything she ever cared about is taken away from her, she feels like it's wrong for her to speak out. She feels like it's wrong for her to shout and scream and rage and want to murder the people that just killed her son. It's not okay for her. Those are feelings that she's not allowed, because a good black person protests in a different way, in a quiet way, in a peaceful way. You know, you have to be nice. You can't be aggressive. You can't fight back. You know, and that's so internalized in her, and it's not in that moment where she like quietly looks at her son, and we get that callback to that scene at the jailhouse where he was begging to be hugged, and now she's the one begging to hug him, and it just fucking tears you apart. Like, the callbacks in this film are fucking amazing, and even that scene at the beginning at the gas station, just like, in such a succinct way, with such a weird scene that feels completely surreal, it kind of like encompasses what like the day-to-day of this person is. Like, he is just surrounded by death and cruelty. This dog gets run over and he tries to save him. He asks for help and there's nobody there. So what does he do? He lays the dead dog down and he continues pumping gas. Because what else is he gonna do? He is in a world where like injustice, murder, death happens. You try to do something about it. You grieve for only a second, and then you move on with your life. Because what else are you going to do? And it just, it's fucking heart-wrenching, man. It's so good. It's such a well-done film.
I think also like fear is such a big part of the film. Like, there's the way he reacts to things is that he reacts in anger when he's scared. Like, you see it, the prison bit, like he's angry that his mum won't give him a hug because he's scared in the prison. He gets angry at his old boss because he wants his job back, because he's afraid of, you know, getting money, and he needs a job. And then he reacts in anger to the police officers because also he's in a very frustrating and horrible situation, but he's also afraid of what's going to happen to him and his friends. And it's just,
he's a fucking kid. He's 20.
Exactly.
Like, holy shit.
It's,
what a film to start with. Like, come on. Like, you know, your featured debut. And it's that. It's so good. So good.
No, it is quite incredible. That it's just such a
hidden gem sort of thing.
The most horrifying and the saddest part about this movie is that I watched it for the first time in 2020, and this movie is still as relevant as it was when it came out.
Oh yeah, no, that's the really sad thing. It's so relevant, and it's eerie as well. That you talked about how the officer had his knee over his neck, and boom, what happened 7 years later with George Floyd? It's quite eerie that, you know, it's the exact same thing.
So many black men and women have been murdered by the people that are supposed to be defending them and
Yeah.
protecting them.
Mhm.
So many people live in constant fear as just their normal day to day.
Yeah.
I
And this,
I remember watching this thing in the news where like in certain schools that are like majority black, they have classes at the end of the school session, like at the end of the school day, kids stay back to get taught how to interact with police officers so they
Really?
don't get murdered,
Jesus.
how to properly
That's
interact
sick.
with a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
That's an actual class
horrible.
7-year-old's thing.
Yeah. And these sort of themes and these sort of ideas are something that will carry on into Coogler's later stuff as well. But let's move on to Creed now. So his second film, immediately he jumps into a franchise film and an iconic franchise that was Rocky. And it's become, he's doing a legacy sequel with Creed. And so, Creed, we follow Adonis, and who is obviously the son of Apollo Creed. And we get a quick flashback at the start that shows how his life, he's in juvie, he's sort of a kid that was obviously fostered and went through various foster parents and was neglected and abandoned, and is clearly
very young.
Yes, obviously he never knew Apollo Creed because he died in the ring, and he was also the child of an affair, I think.
Yes, because that was mentioned.
Yeah, and then of course one day, Apollo's wife comes in and asks him to come home with her. And then what we get with Creed is actually, I think, a really, really interesting start, because usually with the Rocky type films or sporting stories, and it becomes a really integral theme in this film, is that it's the rags to riches story. It's the story of the poor boy and the underdog coming out on top and becoming the champion, the winner, and making it to fame and stardom. But here, what it does is you take this kid who actually is in that situation at the start, and then boom, you cut to
the wealth. Yeah.
Immediately to boom, he's just had a promotion at some financial company. He's in a suit and tie. He's looking sharp. He's looking great. He's doing really well for himself, really wealthy. And then he just goes
the rags to riches.
Yeah, they skipped that whole part. It's like he was basically, taken in by his, what is it? Your stepmom, I guess.
Yeah, no, it was.
I always get confused with family relationships.
His
dad's
widow.
Wife. His dad's widow, and so obviously he gets thrown into a life of income, and then boom, he's already got the money and he's already a fighter. But then he goes, you know what? Nah, I'm going to patch all that. I'm going to throw it all away. I'm going to become the next champion. And we've never actually talked about Creed on this show. I don't know what you guys actually think of this film.
I don't know if you have. I haven't seen the second one, but I really, really enjoyed the first Creed when I watched it. Like I've only have like a passing familiarity with the like Rocky Balboa franchise.
Yes.
I watched the first one, and I might have seen Rocky 4 at some point, I think. But I'm not really that familiar with like the franchise overall. And it was absolutely incredible. Honestly, I really, really enjoyed it. I remember watching it with my family, and it was a standout of that year.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, well, what about you? I don't know what you think of Creed.
So
at all.
I've not seen any Rocky films. I've only
really
seen...
well, you two both. Okay, right. Okay.
I don't think I've seen any Rocky films, to be honest. Like, I could have, but I don't remember watching any Rocky films. I've seen Creed 2. I saw that with you actually, Lewis, and I quite enjoyed Creed 2. I think I enjoyed this one a little bit less than Creed 2.
What? Really?
I think because...
Amazing.
It's weird. I think it's because for like, Creed 2 kind of jumped right in, and it was just continuing the story.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think I've just watched them the wrong way round. Like, I think that's what the issue is here. Is that I didn't start with the origin story.
Right.
And I went straight into the kind of... bigger, in quotation marks, sequel, because it's like bringing in the past characters. So when I watched Creed 2, I thought that was quite a big thing. I was like, oh, this is quite cool. Like, I know them from the Rocky 2 poster or whatever that film was.
Rocky 4, Kyle, come on. What is this?
I don't know. But,
because that's Drago's kid.
But, like, I definitely think, but I still really enjoyed this film. I have a couple of groups, like, I think my thing was, like, after watching... out of the three films, like, obviously Creed and Black Panther are over the 2 hour mark, and like for me, I was like, I really liked that really short 80 minutes. But I really loved the characters for me in this film.
Yeah.
Like, I found like it has the classic sport film stereotypes, but then I felt they didn't actually annoy me as much as I thought they were going to. Like,
you think I don't? I think it does its best to sort of, throw away the cliches of the sporting genre.
Well,
like I
mean,
said, having the main character just be wealthy and then just go.
I know, but then you've got parts like Rocky being the teacher that doesn't want to teach, but then goes, "Oh no, I will teach." Yeah. But then I liked it more because there was a connection, because it was only when he discovered that he was Apollo Creed's son that he was like, I feel like I owe it to teach it. It wasn't like out of reluctance, like you've drilled me down, kid. I'll come out of retirement. Like there was something extra
like,
there, which is why I liked it. And then
I'm really sad we didn't get like the slow-mo shots of both of them when they were young, like Apollo Creed and Rocky just dancing in the beach. And
yes.
The only thing that kind of annoyed me, and it's a tiny little gripe, is that he was so adamant that he was going to do it on his own, and he wasn't going to use his dad's name. And then he kind of goes at the end, I kind of have to now. And I was a bit like...
No, but that's the whole point.
I know
the film is about identity and legacy.
Oh, well, I know that, but I was like, I kind of wanted him to kind of go a wee bit, more trying to go on his own. But then, like I said, the film kind of makes me feel okay about it, because it actually turns it to a good point where it's like, listen, we're giving you this opportunity to fight a huge guy, but the only reason we're going to do it is with the name. And so that's what I'm saying, there were the kind of cliches there, but I think this film for me actually kind of did some nice slight twists on it, on the fact you had Rocky kind of doing that.
That's really interesting, because I mean, I've seen most of the Rocky films. I've only not seen Rocky 6, which is actually meant to be quite good, which is annoying that I haven't seen that one.
Is that just the Rocky Balboa one?
Rocky Balboa, yeah. And I love Creed. I really think it is one of the best. It's in the Rocky, quote unquote, in the Rocky franchise. It's not really the Rocky franchise, but out of I guess if you could compare it to the Rocky Cinematic Universe, it's one of the best, if not the best, in the entire series for me.
I remember my father saying that it was the strongest one out of all the Rocky movies.
Yeah, it's definitely up there for the ones I've seen. Yeah,
within his tour, it packs so much in its runtime. I think there's so much going on, and I think what it does so well is that every single, obviously, like we discussed with Fruitvale Station, all the characters feel very nuanced and natural. And here we go again. Adonis Creed, I love his whole vision, his whole path, his whole what he wants to be and what he wants to do. He just wants to be the best. He's like the sort of really ambitious, aggressive sort of force, but simultaneously he is also sort of kind of similar to Fruitvale Station. There's this whole sort of, I think I could do an essay on the whole Michael B. Jordan connection in these three films. That he's also someone who is
anger and
that he's incredibly flawed in that, because he really is missing that sort of father figure. And there's this whole thing when Rocky, I guess spoilers if you haven't seen Creed, but Rocky gets diagnosed with cancer, and Rocky basically refuses the chemo and is like, no, I'm okay to die. I just want to see my wife. That's really it. It's not really about you.
She gone through the chemo or something like that.
She went through the chemo and it didn't work for her.
I don't want that to happen to me.
Exactly, it didn't work for her. But the whole thing of why, obviously, Adonis is so upset. It's not just because you just wanted to die, you're my trainer, what the hell. It's the fact that I'm going to lose another father figure.
Yeah.
I'm going to be on my own again. Look, I hate saying this. I hate having to say this, but it's a film that is actually about family. I hate saying that because Vin Diesel's ruined that word, but this actually is a film about finding your family and having a family.
Yeah,
and I just think that's so sweet.
Finding your place in the world through the people that care about you and you care about. And also, I love the touches where, it feels like with his search for a father figure, he's kind of undermining his two maternal figures that were there for him and stuff. That's a really good touch, I remember. And again, I've watched this movie a while ago, and I don't remember that well, but I remember that message specifically, and I remember it being very powerful, because you do have this whole idea with like, oh yeah, my dad, yeah, but what about the people who are actually there for you? Like, you're looking for this person to like guide you and tell you who you are, but you've had these people around you actually guiding you and showing you who you are.
And just also, I just like the whole relationship with him, Bianca. I think the chemistry with him and with Michael B. Jordan, Tessa Thompson's really, really good.
Yeah.
I buy the
Actually
relationship
good,
a lot.
You
but
don't
also,
get that a lot, do you?
just down to, is this an enjoyable sports movie / boxing movie? It's filmed so goddamn well. Like the one shot, like people go on about this all the time, but the one shot boxing sequence in this is so great. I can't remember who he's fighting. It's sort of like bang in the middle of the film is when he has the whole one shot sequence.
Gym owner's son.
Yes, the gym owner's son he's fighting. And it's just so fluid and fantastic, and that has a great contrast with the final fight, which is like really kind of snappy editing. Every punch like is like so. It just like it's a really great duel of like people just beating the absolute shit out of each other. Like if that was a real boxing match, oh my god, that would be considered one of the greatest, because it goes on for 12 rounds and they're just killing each other and just hit for hit, blow for blow. It's just fantastic. But also I think it's still a really emotionally successful film as well. And obviously like when you handle a subplot like as heavy as cancer, which also I'll be getting into with Living, and also it can be handled, which we've seen this year terribly in a film like Thor: Love and Thunder. That angers me so much how terribly mishandled that was, but that's not about this. Tessa Thompson was in that as well. Anyway, when the way they handle the cancer story in this is done so effectively, and all credit to Sylvester Stallone, who I still think should have won the Best Supporting Actor that year. It's a shame he didn't. Regardless,
surprised he didn't. Honestly,
Was he
this felt
nominated?
like his lad.
He got nominated.
Like,
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
People really thought he was gonna. He was like
I
really
generally-
campaigning and gunning for it, and people thought it was a 2-horse race, and he didn't. He didn't.
Remind me, because obviously I've watched these the wrong way around. Did he have? Was cancer a huge plot in the second Creed?
No. He the cancer's gone in the second one.
Yeah.
Because he goes through the chemo. He goes through the chemo and stuff. But the way it's handled, like, see the scene where he gets diagnosed and he just sort of like just sits there and has to actually take that in, and then he denies the chemotherapy and talks about his wife and that. It just brings a tear to my eye. Like he just sells it so well, and the way it's also
see like that history in him when he reacts like
absolutely.
that. You see the boxer, like the wild British guy coming out and like putting up that emotional wall and being like, no, I'm not doing this. It's so fucking like it brings you to tears. Honestly,
absolutely. And also the really, really clever, that could have been done really goofy, but it's actual really, really beautiful, is mixing in a sports montage with chemotherapy, in the sense that he's saying, if I'm fighting, you have to fight too, and the way they're sort of training, well, not training, he's going through treatment, but the way it's kind of done together in this really like frenetic and exciting montage, it's like that's brilliant. That is brilliant.
I think that's what Kyle's means when he says like he sees a lot of like really corny, really like mushy kind of like typical sports things.
Exactly.
But it's because that is a fucking corny idea. If you just shout that out in a writer's room, people are going to be like, oh, that's a bit too much. But then the execution of it is what takes it and makes it actually like brilliant and worth watching. Like it's this really fucking out there idea. Like if someone imagine though, if someone tells you, hey, we're gonna have like he's beating cancer and he's training both at the same time. There's a montage. Feels kind of insensitive, feels kind of out there, but it's in the execution
it's done
where
so
it actually manages to work.
Even
it would be quite depressing if they both lost at the end. That would have been. That would have been
he does. Creed. Well, Apollo does lose. But
that's what I'm saying. If they both lost, whoa, that would have been.
And it's just
post credit scene. Rocky Balboa's in Valhalla.
I love, and it's that whole training. I mean, look, a training montage is actually really kind of easy to make you like you get your blood going and be like, yeah, come on. But yeah, I just love that whole bit where like he's just like he's running along the street, and then it's just all the guys in like the dirt bikes and quad bikes behind him and stuff like that. That's just a really great shot, and then it like turns to slow motion. I love it.
I love it. For this movie, because like they did a
fantastic job.
Oh my god, that was amazing.
I love the last shot. Because even though I've never seen Rocky, I know those stairs. I've seen enough memes and parodies to know those steps. And I was like, that's a pretty kind of nice little kind of way to cap off the film.
Maurice Alberti did the cinematography for this.
Wow.
She also did
Did
The
he-
Wrestler, so she's kind of does these
oh,
ringside
into the
cinematography that films. Then
I mean, it makes
Yeah.
sense if you think
Mhm.
about it. Like, the ring
Mhm.
is kind of a very constrained kind of like place to shoot. Like, it's
Mhm.
hard to
Yeah.
like weave your camera around that place.
yes,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
keeping focus on the fighter. So it makes
Yeah.
sense that they get someone who has experience with that.
It-
But yeah,
But,
you did a fucking brilliant job with this movie.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that we're getting to. I mean, well, obviously we'll be talking about this again probably when
Mm.
we will when Creed 3 comes out and Rocky
Mm.
in general. But yeah, it's just interesting that going from a film is so raw and in a way, film wise simpler, Fruitvale Station, to then stepping up to a franchise film at that. To Creed is a really, really big and bold step, and one that just he brings all that stuff that he knows from Fruitvale Station Coogler. He brings all that human element in. He brings that raw
Yeah.
storytelling, that great character-driven
I
stuff,
feel like
and those
that's
great
like
character
the reason
relationships,
it
and he
works.
brings that
Yeah.
into Creed. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a great build-up, I think.
Yeah, because anybody can like follow the story structure and the tropes and make
Mhm.
like a like a very normal kind of
Yeah.
film. But
he,
it's
he
about
had
taking it to that next level.
yeah
Yeah.
because like he came into this franchise, which
Hmm.
I mean I can't remember. I don't know how long it was between Rocky Balboa and Creed.
It
Like,
was
Hmm.
12 years. No,
12
that's a
years.
lie. 9 years.
9
years.
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 Okay.
Mm.
And he was just able to do like he got the script but then he was just he did everything his way.
Mhm.
And I think that's what really helped him. Oh, no,
And it's
I think
quite.
that's what really
I actually
Oh,
find
hell
it.
yeah.
I find it quite well. He wrote the script, to be fair, along
Yeah.
with Aaron Covington. It was obviously based
Yeah,
on
but
the character
like
script by
you
Sylvester
do
Stallone.
have to think, and we'll see
Mhm.
that in his next film. But
Yeah.
like whenever you're dealing with a franchise movie, whenever you're
Mhm.
dealing with a big IP,
Yeah.
there is a certain amount of pressure to move in
Yes.
one direction, to do certain
Mhm.
things, to follow certain tropes, and it feels
Yeah.
like, thankfully, like there might have still been a lot of pressure. I don't want to undermine what Ryan Coogler must have and his team must have gone through, but like it feels like they were definitely allowed to have a lot more agency with
Yes.
how they chose to tell this story
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what they chose to tell.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I guess if we're going to talk about just quickly the franchise filmmaking, like the bigger the franchise and the bigger the budget, the more constraints you will have as a filmmaker. And I guess
The
because
more
this is
producer
more
Yeah.
producer problems and more studio
Mm.
problems. But with this, I guess that I don't even know what the budget of this was, but it wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot, and it did very well. So that's great.
I mean,
But-
luckily he's never had producer problems and never will, so that's fine.
Was that sarcasm,
Yes.
Kyle?
I have no
'Cause I feel
idea.
like it was, because-
what's
and
the
I
ne-
think that's a
what's the
good
next
segue.
film?
What's the next one
Thir-
coming up?
30, sorry,
Yeah, so
35
let's-
million, Lewis, just so you know.
35 million. There you go. 35 million. So relative. I think Fruitvale Station must have been like 2, honestly, and he's jumped up
I
to like
think it
10
was-
times that, and then
To be honest, I think I checked. I think it was like 900,000. I
Not
genuinely
even
think
$1 million.
I think
There
it
you
was
go.
under
I
a
mean,
million.
well, there you go. But now let's
that-
talk about, of course, Ryan Coogler's biggest film to date, which could be by the end of this year, could be financially beaten by Black Panther 2. But this is Black Panther 2018, Marvel Studios Black Panther. Well, there's a lot to kind of talk about. I'll just quickly go over the plot. So, of course, reeling
Yes.
over the death of his father, T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman. It's the week after he dies in Civil War. I know, it feels weird I've got to switch gears and jump into the whole lore of the MCU,
Marvel,
but yes,
yeah,
a week
I
after...
know, we've
yeah.
gone literally from like
Yes.
one of the most relevant and heart-wrenching stories to
Yeah.
the fucking MCU.
Yes.
And it just
But anyway,
it feels like
yes.
such a whiplash. honestly.
If you've not seen Civil War, to us, we'll get into what I think about. I
don't
think if
gotta
you
watch
haven't
Civil War.
seen,
It's
if
not
you haven't
good.
watched Civil War, I think Black Panther is actually, if you haven't seen any MCU film, I think it's one you could watch really without any other context, and it'd be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, a week after Civil War ends, T'Challa's father is dead, and now they have to go, to the memoriam and put him to rest. But also, they have to then decide who will obviously be the next king of Wakanda. Will it be T'Challa, or will he obviously be overthrown by another, rival tribe leader who can beat him in battle?
Yeah.
Yes. Of course, T'Challa remains king and stays the Black Panther, but meanwhile, outside of the city, there is a man named Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, who is, of course, has some sort of vendetta against the Wakandan people and T'Challa, which I'm sure everyone knows by now, but we'll get into here. So, yeah, Black Panther, I think we did a show on Black Panther 4 years ago in the Dundee radio station.
We could have done.
I think we did. I think I remember talking about it back then. But
we would have been around by that point, maybe.
But I think with Black Panther,
it was either Black Panther or it was when Endgame came out.
Infinity
We
War,
talked about we built up to like the best of the MCU beforehand or something.
Yes.
Oh, we were so naive.
I
back
think
let's put this out there. Out of the MCU movies, this is one of the strongest ones.
This is definitely one of the best ones, I think.
This is one of the most interesting, the most visually and plot-wise interesting movies, and it tackles the most interesting issues. But out of Ryan Coogler's filmography, this is both one of like his worst movie and also his biggest legacy.
Yes. I will say, look, for me, I mean, I'll get into this more when we talk about it more, but I think Black Panther actually is, to me, a sliver away from greatness. No, I really think it is close to being like a true, like just a fantastic film.
A nice, good
but it
movie,
has so many little problems,
and they are little.
And there is, and especially within its third act, and visually speaking, and with a certain Martin Freeman. I think there's just too many little things that do bug me and stop me from really loving this film. But I think there's so much great in it, and I actually want to start with Michael B. Jordan again, who is
so fucking good.
Probably is he the best MCU villain? I mean, he's
like,
I think there's
this is the best MCU villain.
Like, yeah, and I think so much of that comes to, once again, Michael B. Jordan's a fantastic performer, and his character has. I think he's the character that definitely Ryan Coogler. I think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating here, but I think Ryan Coogler would have had the most interesting writing and the one that he really wanted to bring to the screen, because he's obviously
really interesting. I mean, it shows that he gave the role to Michael B. Jordan.
Sorry, I thought.
Oh no, that was it. I wasn't going any farther. No, I was saying it's like it's like you could have cast any kind of actor in this, but the fact that it feels like the role was written for him, given that like duality between like that righteousness and that anger. Like Michael B. Jordan is fantastic at doing that, fiery anger, showing it in his face whenever he like turns the dime, and suddenly like you see that rage boiling up from underneath, and there's the perfect fucking character for it. Yeah,
and I think why I say it's so close to being great, and I think so much all the great stuff comes from I believe. I mean, I'll never know, but I believe it's Coogler's vision over the studio's vision, and because from the get go, from the get go, we begin with a little narration with I forget
the dad's name,
the dad's name.
Yeah.
Oh fuck me.
Charles' dad, I can't remember what he's called.
That's so irritating that I forgot his name. But because of the nation, so was it is it Eric Killmonger?
So Onjobu is the character's name, and it's Sterling K. Brown.
Thank you, Sterling K. Brown. That's what I was trying to remember. I was going to call him Steven. Anyway, Sterling K. Brown. Yes, but because it's a little narration of him telling
he's T'Chaka's brother, and he's
T'Chaka's brother. Yes, telling Eric. Is it Eric?
Eric Killmonger?
Yes, I am right. Eric. Telling Eric basically the story of his past, and then boom, what happens? We obviously get a little narration stuff, and then boom, we're in Oakland 1990s. I was like, well, okay, what the hell? What a great way to start this film. We're obviously seeing Sterling K. Brown, who is clearly, who's an outside spy from Wakanda, and is become a part of sort of gang life and sort of I don't know if it's not a militia. It's sort of just a Black Panther type group.
Race. You could probably say. I mean, they had guns.
They had guns.
So there's the intent of like militia activity.
He's basically been inspired because he sees the oppression of the rest of the black civilization outside of his home country. That he sees how oppressed they are, and that he actually doesn't want to go back home, and that he does want to
he wants to fight
join the
for
fight. He joined the
people
fight.
Exactly, yeah. So
And
like
sort of-
he represents this current of like we have these opposing ideas in the movie, and whereas T'Challa's father T'Chaka represent this idea of isolation.
Yep.
We'll just close our borders and we'll be safe. We'll not tell people about us, and we'll stay safe like we have for years and generations. His brother is like this idea of like, hey, you're like, it's also like in the 80s 70s kind of thing, so you do have like this feel of like the, you know, a bunch of like movements that were happening, and it was like this kind of like, maybe he's doing some violent insurrections, maybe he's trying to liberate some people, you know, maybe doing some terrorism and stuff, you know. You get that kind of vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, what's so great about that story is like, okay, wow, you thought we'd be starting off with Wakanda, but we're here, and then what you then get is that's a great instigator for Killmonger, who's basically is left. What you get this opening is that he's left with no one, you know. T'Chaka goes in, kills his brother because his brother wants to actually help, you know, African American people or people who have come from Africa, you know, centuries ago or decades, centuries ago, and have been spread across the world. And he wants to help black people, but T'Chaka's like no, and if he is killed for that, you know. And obviously, what a great way to start your villain motivation, quote unquote villain motivation.
It'll come back later on, but that narration that we get at the start, where we get the story of Wakanda, its origins, its beauty, where everything comes from, the legend of the Black Panther. All of that is being told by this father to his son. This son who has been like completely kept away from his heritage, from no fault of his own. He's just been like thrown out as like this beautiful like mirroring of what happened to so many people during the slave trade. Like this idea of he just you know lost that connection, and the only way he has it is through these stories. And it really sets up that anger and feeling of injustice that he has in him, you know.
And a pure. And like I said about it earlier, it's like that. It's almost like a sort of spiritual continuation of Michael B. Jordan with Coogler in these three films. You have this person who's sort of left alone with no paternal figure anymore, who then has to, you know, act out against, you know, in this case, it's like he's acting out against sort of a white oppressive society, and that he feels that he's sort of like owed something, and wants to fight back against basically what he's been oppressed by his whole life and what he's seen. Basically, in a weird roundabout way, this sort of white oppression led to his father's death in a weird sort of roundabout circumstance, if you get me. It's a very, very odd thing. But yeah, going from there, I think... Now, this is what I mean, right? With Black Panther, it's really interesting because I think at the time of its release, I don't think I got the full picture. I think it's a film. I remember when it was nominated for Best Picture, and I was like, "That's so strange to me." That film really didn't feel like it was, because it was so like. I still think a lot of the action in it is really messy and stuff like that, and I think it's kind of a hindrance to the film. But regardless,
and a lot of the filmmaking in the latter parts when it turns to full CGI and stuff.
CGI,
like it's clear a lot of the scenes in this movie, because of budgetary constraints or whatever, weren't really directed by the same crew that directed the rest of the film. It was left off to like smaller studios to do and stuff, and there's like a lot of like back and forth there. We have the normal Marvel problems of they don't pay enough and they don't give enough time to the VFX departments to actually do their jobs. It's messy in that sense.
When it was nominated for Best Picture, I was like, really? I feel like there was a lot of better films that year, blah, blah, blah. But then kind of when the Oscars kind of came about that time, I was actually, you know what, no, what Black Panther meant to so many people and what it really was is a massive cultural cornerstone in sort of Hollywood cinema and obviously American cinema in general. And what it meant to so many African American people and, you know, black people across the world. And it's something I was like, I understand it, but I can never possibly fully understand it. It's something where I was like, I get why it was up for Best Picture. It's fully understandable. It was a massive, huge cultural zeitgeist thing and a good film. But it's something like, I can understand it. As a white person, I can never really fully understand how much that film meant to so many people, and still does to this day. And I actually think, see, when Chadwick Boseman passed away, and seeing the impact that he was as the hero Black Panther and what he meant to an entire generation of kids and stuff. And it's so just sort of, it was kind of really took me aback. I'm like, wow, I kind of really was a dick when that film came out. I was just oh, it's whatever. But like, what that film really meant.
All that shit.
Absolutely.
When we grew up, we had so many fucking characters in film that we could relate to. So many heroes. Like we had Spider-Man, we have fucking Luke Skywalker. Like you could throw a dime in the water, and we had like an icon, someone that, and especially because like all three of us are cis men, so like it was really fucking easy to find a hero. We can find this specific person we related to the most and be like, wow, that's what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be Spider-Man. I want to be Indiana Jones. Like there's that connection. But to think that this movie meant that to so many kids, like there's so many children, not only like just kids like black guys, but like a lot of girls, like boys and girls, because like the female characters in this film are absolutely fucking fantastic. Like they're the way they have such agency and incredible characters. Like there's so much to choose from to be like, this is my hero. This is the person that represents who I want to be, Like, we underestimate that because, of course, we did. We fucking didn't, we didn't have that connection.
Yeah, but that was the thing, and it's sad that sort of like, obviously, I sort of realize that, and it is something that it's like, especially when you get all different types of films with different races and different genders and different sexualities and all sorts of different perspectives on life. It's a great gateway into sort of that experience, but it's something that's only can really solely be fully understood by a different sort of group of people, and that's something that I think with Black Panther was so important to so many people. And you could be like, well, there was black superheroes on screen before Chadwick Boseman. Like, yes, I know, but not to the degree and actually having representation within the biggest franchise in all of history.
Yes,
so
and just the idea of Wakanda itself is this idea of like what an Africa could be if colonialism hadn't absolutely destroyed it and pillaged it for its resources. Like this idea of like this culture that's been put down for generations, like rising up and flourishing, like this futuristic like Africanism kind of thing, like this aesthetic that it had, like this embrace of like very classical musics mixed with like the hip hop and the rap and like all this like modern outcries for like it's just really fucking powerful. And even though it has a fuck ton of flaws, and we will get to those flaws, like you can't underestimate what it must have meant to see that representation,
Kel, so what were your quick thoughts before we kind of delve into other stuff with Black Panther?
Yes, what's your favorite part?
I know I've kind of caught you off guard there. But...
So so after finishing Black Panther, the thought came to my head, like what you were saying, Lewis, that this was sort of a way of being greatness. My overall thought was, if this wasn't a Marvel film, it would be a masterpiece. Because
like I was saying with the studios, you can feel like there's two sort of visions going on here.
That's the thing I was saying here, that I think this film is a great example of the Marvel producer problem. Now, I'm not saying that it's all of it, because I think the first act is just incredible of setting up the world.
Great world building,
we're within the first 20 minutes, you're introduced to the world of Wakanda. You're introduced to the idea of how the Black Panther powers work. We get a quick introduction to that. We get introduction of how the interpolitical systems of Wakanda work. The whole idea that the tribes can actually challenge the current king for reign. Love that.
That was left for the mountains. Like we have like all this world building just dumped.
Exactly, it's jumped and it's done so well. And like I really do think that Ryan Coogler was just left to his own devices until around the third act. And that's when these sneaky bastards put their hands in and really just kind of like, I mean, the idea is, I mean, we can go into the visuals, but I think the first jet fly through Africa and entering into Wakanda, I think that's probably better visuals of the film because
Yeah,
I think they
it
really
looks good. It looks good.
I think they put a lot of effort into that first. Let's get the really cool shots of it flying through Africa, and let's get that first introduction to Wakanda spot on.
Yeah.
And it was. But then I feel it just kept going downhill.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that this is what, but I think this is what kind of pushes it down, is that I think it's got one of the worst final fights of a Marvel film.
Yeah.
In,
it's a
in
problem.
recent
Absolutely.
memory, at least. Like, I could probably scour and find some worse ones, but we get a really, I mean, the idea is, I the more and more I get it, the more and more I hate seeing the classic hero versus himself.
Mirror
but
of
just
the hero.
bad, mirror of the hero. And that, and I was like, you've got these two really good characters that have got so much good development that, honestly, if their final fight was just them two sitting down having a vocal argument, I'd have given that a 10 out of 10. Like,
I've always felt because this is the thing. I always thought this was just always my vision of like, oh, this would have been a little bit better. Is that okay? The two of them are fighting, blah blah blah, and then something happens, so their suits stop working, and they have to just fight physically. I was like, what a great place if they had to fight, sort of like they did in the waterfall, waterfall scene, but also just in the throne room. I'm like, you're fighting for the throne. Use that as an actual symbol. Might be on the nose, but have like have a cool scrap in the throne room where you don't need to use any visual effects. Hey, get a cinematographer from Creed back and do a one shot fight. You know, I don't know.
And then the Rhino comes in and burns the throne down.
The weird thing about the ending of the movie and the weird thing about the fight is like, the previous fight scenes, the one in the waterfall when he's challenged by the super fucking amazing gorilla dude. Love that guy. Yes, M'Baka, like when he's challenged by M'Baka, that's a brilliant fight. The fight again with Killmonger, where like you see that like he's holding back, like you see he's losing not because he doesn't have the strength to fight Killmonger, but because of that emotional revelation and that blow and the fact that he feels guilty about what's happening. You know, he feels responsible. Like, it's fucking brilliant. But then this last scene, it's clearly the script just said, and now they fight. And they just gave it off to some VFX artists, and they were like, do something maybe with the trains. Like, it has nothing to do with the thematic core of the film. Every other fight scene we've had in this film had so much connection to the actual like theming of the films, the what the characters were going through. And in this one, it's just two catmen, they fight in a train track. Let's go, do that. You know, and it just feels wrong because it is wrong. You don't like, even the camera movements feel wrong because clearly the cinematographer wasn't directing it. Which is the weird thing, is there's just, it's a VFX thing, so let's just let them do it. But fucking hell, you need visual consistency, you know? It's not. Sorry, I really.
No, I was just thinking, like, there was one thing I was watching that kind of bugged me, where I kind of wanted a bit more. Well, right. This is going to be good because I want to get your opinion on it. So obviously the idea is when Killmonger comes into power, he wants to kind of go out there and introduce Wakanda in the world in supplying weapons to minorities in this sense, right? And what I kind of wanted, because watching the film, because I watched it again recently, a couple of nights ago, just after I finished Creed and Fruitvale Station, was that I felt just like, right, so this entire capital or country or whatever you want to call it, Wakanda, will just quickly change support for their leader, like, quite instantly in the moral sense. Where, like, I would have loved, because the only person that kind of gives a hint in this Wakanda society of, I want to go out there and I want, like, Wakanda to go, is his love interest. See, if we were given... if we were given a few more scenes that seemed like there was actually like a divide,
like support for that,
in the support, then I felt like that would have seen like more justified that Killmonger could come in and win over the support of the people. Because
that's an interesting thing.
When I'm watching it, it's like he comes in and then everybody goes, "We support you," and then T'Challa comes back in power and they're like, "We all supported you. We were just testing this other guy out."
Yeah, because we have like the very like T'Challa and his whole family and the court, like they're the elite. Even if the people live well and stuff, they do represent like the very like 1% part of the
Mm-hmm.
country, and we only get their perspective. The only character that we get that seemingly has this internalized anger that changes sides instantly is like the Rhino guy, like
Daniel
love him.
Kaluuya's
Daniel
character.
Kaluuya.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes, Daniel Kaluuya, because he by the
Rhino
way
Man.
fucking such the Rhino Man. He does such a good job with this very small part. By the way, fucking
Yeah.
Kaluuya just kills it wherever you put him. It doesn't matter. Throw him anywhere. He's fucking.
I don't know.
brilliant.
I don't know
But-
why he's not in the sequel, but anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the
Was it
thing.
not
like,
scheduling?
I don't know.
oh, might
Anyway.
have been scheduling.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like, we should like. I feel like if this, but again, that feels like another Marvel issue. It feels like we would have had more like interaction with what the actual day to day of like someone in Wakanda would be,
Mhm.
if not now in like some of the like. That's another thing. Like with the the tragic death of Chadwick Boseman, it's hard sometimes to know like what would have happened for this sequel.
Yes.
You know, like what was actually the plan for this sequel and stuff. But yeah, but like I understand what you mean, and like we have this weird kind of like thing with that. And a thing about Killmonger specifically that I only learned after watching this fantastic YouTube video that I recommended to you, Lewis, before. Oh, what's the name of the guy?
I'll get up. You keep talking.
Okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, he had this fantastic essay talking about like Black Panther, and it was fucking brilliant, and made me like realize a lot of things I hadn't realized before, find a lot of connections, and appreciate things that I actually didn't like about the movie at first. With Killmonger specifically, like the whole idea of like, oh yeah, he's technically in the right, but now he wants to make like a Wakandan empire. What's this like weird fascist imperialistic kind of thing? And like you see him shoot his girlfriend. Just it felt like one of those Marvel moves to just make the character feel evil, even though he was right, kind of thing, which we have seen like done like several times since, kind of thing. And it just felt very weird. But after this video, like this idea of like he talked about this amazing like concept that I hadn't, because I don't know the history, but like this idea of like lots of like revolutionary movements, especially in Africa and different countries, like pushing this idea of like liberation from like imperialism, and using that to lead to a very conservative and very fascist kind of like movement, you know, like utilizing this injustices that people are clearly angry and justifiably want to revolt against, and using that to lead to these like very oppressive kind of governments. And I feel like now that I have that backing and stuff, like I can understand that that's the role that he was playing.
Yeah.
Like
it's
the
the video is FD
imperialists,
Signifier. It's You're Wrong About Black Panther is the name of the YouTube video.
Yes.
If people want to check out, it is very, very interesting. It's obviously talks about the sort of the black experience of watching that film as well. Something that we can't really discuss, but
Exactly,
that's a very important aspect of that film. But the Killmonger thing, back to Killmonger, it's like, yeah, it is actually quite incredible, and I don't think Marvel would, weirdly enough, even though we're past this point, would actually make a film like this again, and I'll get on to that, right? But Killmonger, especially having a character who's basically just outrightly saying to the audience, like, how terrible sort of like the white leaders in America have mistreated black people throughout decades. Just basically say that a Disney film is going out and being like, yeah, this is a problem, and I'm going to change that, and I'm going to
outside the screen.
Yeah, and it's sort of like a whole full circle thing where obviously he's like all these years of it. He talks about it in the museum when he was looking at an African mask, the African artifact, and he's like,
such a good touch.
he's like, oh no, I'll take it off your hands, and she's like, you know, they're not for sale. It's like, well, how do you think your ancestors took them, huh? Great scene. But then it's like, obviously he then wants to become the radical colonial in a way, who wants to use obviously the Wakandan tech to then take over. But what
which
I was going to say
also
is
interesting, because you can see that like in his backstory, he worked for the U.S. Army, so you can understand where those ideas, like that inherent rage, it comes from a real place and a positive place. But then the way he pushes it, it's clearly been influenced by his surroundings and his military training, which is really interesting, because even his worst parts aren't aren't Wakandan. They're fucking American.
American,
you know?
yeah.
It's
It's
so
also
fucking
it's also
light.
quite funny how I would say with
Yeah.
Creed how that's like a privilege versus rags to riches thing in the final fight,
Yeah.
where obviously. Because like they say that in the film, it's like, well, you had like his opponent, it's like Connor or something, is like you had like a silver spoon in that. I came from nothing, and look where I am, and stuff like that. And it's like here, it's like there's also like Eric Killmonger came from an impoverished background, is going up against royalty, and in this version, it's like but royalty wins anyway. Weird thing.
Yeah.
No, but like I was saying, I don't think Marvel would make a film like this today, is because I feel like they're so caught up in their own unit, like they can't think outside the box in a weird way. Like they're so caught up in continuing their own universe and their own narrative that they wouldn't make a film that is thinking bigger.
It's like
I think that's where they're at right
now. They justify their simplicity and the straightforwardness with the idea of like the interconnected universe and the world building. Their world building is granted absolute shit, but they justify like the simplicity with like we need to keep the continuity and the world building intact, without realizing that films and stories, whether serialized or standalone, are inherently metaphorical, are inherently have a meaning outside the text itself. Like, and this film 100% has a meaning outside the text,
I mean, even with something like, and I'm not saying obviously like Shang-Chi had to do this or anything, I'm not saying that at all, but even a film like Shang-Chi had a good chance to sort of really give us like Chinese American perspective and viewpoint on the world, and giving a good story of that, but they didn't do that at all. Like it's nothing like Black Panther. Kind of the very opposite to Black Panther, and that's what I mean. Like they wouldn't make a film like this anymore.
Weirdly racist, and I don't know how they managed to do that.
But I mean, just to kind of quickly sum up really some great points about Black Panther is like outside of some rocky visual effects, is that the world design's great. The costume design is fantastic. I think it was Oscar winning in its costume design actually. Really cool looking. This has a really interesting, really cool score too. Great performances across the board. But it's just the little things really that kind of build up to just.
Let's address it. Let's address the one character that we all.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about them. I literally mentioned Martin Freeman.
Everyone forgot. Everyone forgets about it.
But why is Martin Freeman in this film? This is what feels like. It feels like the Kevin Feige came and was like, we want to have Martin Freeman. We want to carry on this character for more shit in the future. And I'm like, but why is he here? He just comes to the end to like
I think it was to get a China release. Let's be honest.
It's just
okay, Kyle. You watched the film the most recently. Remind us, what organization does he work for?
The CIA. It's just not a good look. It's just not a good look. The CIA.
He's a CIA agent.
Yeah.
Oh,
so the CIA.
I just kind of forget he's there, and then
you do forget he's there.
He's just kind of there, and then there was two lines in this that actually gave me a good chuckle. One of them was M'Baku's when he was like, and both of them were. Yeah, and both of them were at Martin Freeman's expense, and then it was Shuri went, "Oh, good, another white boy for me to fix," and that gave me a wee chuckle as well.
Yeah,
I have to say that after rewatching it, I kind of liked Shuri less a wee bit.
Really?
Like I found her a tad bit annoying this time round.
Yeah.
There's some jokes.
That's because of that's because of the fucking Marvel jokes.
Don't. I mean, the sneakers. That scene was quite painful to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested
sure
to see
that was not written by Coogler.
But I'm really interested to see how Shuri's character, especially, kind of develops over the new film. It's just after kind of seeing her in this film that I'm like, I expect she to take a more prominent leadish role.
Yeah, exactly.
She's gonna be the new Black Panther, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, 99%.
Yeah, that's gonna be it.
Lego confirmed it.
But yeah, like you were saying with the CIA thing, that's because obviously they've been instituted to sort of overthrow and just ruin countries and governments. Really, usually.
I mean, they're the ones who introduced drugs into the fucking black neighborhoods so they could have a reason to go after them in the voting thing and arrest them. So I mean, there's a whole we could have a huge list of CIA fucking racial crimes that they've committed throughout the years out of all the organizations. Like, why couldn't it have fucking worked for anything else? Like fucking Interpol, right?
Yeah, I might have to do my jump in here, and I'm gonna. As Gonzalo's lawyer, I might just suggest for him to wrap up the conversation.
No, but it is right. He's got a good. I do agree with you, Gonzalo. I do agree with you. But right, let's sort of. I'm gonna go around the room. I'm gonna go around the virtual room. I'm gonna go around the virtual room here. And Gonzalo, out of the three Ryan Coogler films, what one is your favorite here?
Fruitvale Station.
Fruitvale Station, Kyle.
That is undeniably a masterpiece.
It's gotta be Fruitvale Station. Yeah, I mean this is.
Yeah.
That's okay. Look, I think
he's going to say Black Panther.
No, I think they all provide something unique and different to each other, even though they have like very interesting, similar themes and ideas, especially through his through liner Michael B. Jordan. Like, I think his most emotionally moving and hard-hitting piece is obviously Fruitvale Station. It's also the most prevalent, just straight up telling you like how.
Don't get me wrong. I think the
sort of racial injustice and is most important. And
yeah,
it's like we talked about, very, very. It's just horrible that how relevant that film still is. I think actually Creed is probably his most all-round film. I think his most solidly all-round, emotionally, and just like great to watch, like kind of enthralling blockbuster.
I mean, it's true. Like we said, wouldn't put myself through Fruitvale Station again.
And like we said, we
don't think my heart can take it.
Yeah. And like we said with Black Panther, the most culturally significant film that he's made, and one of the most culturally significant films in modern day.
We will remember Black Panther.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
50 years from now,
and like how, and like we discussed how important that was to so many people, and it's still a good, solid film, and it's one of Marvel's best, no doubt, without question. And it's still a fun watch, even with some of its flaws. But I would probably have to, I don't know. You know what? I'll say Fruitvale Station, I guess. But I really love Creed 2. I really love Creed 2.
He just turns around and goes, it's actually, my favourite's Creed 2. Like, I know it's directed by Ryan Coogler, I'm going to say anyway.
No, but
it's hard. I think they're
the
both...
thing about Ryan Coogler's like filmography at this point, I feel like, is that like all of them are like transcendent within their own genre.
Yeah.
I feel like Fruitvale is one of the best, most effective activism films. I feel like Creed is one of the most like one of the best, most well done recent sports films. Within that genre, and within the superhero genre, it's like we have to talk about Black Panther as one of the defining movies. So if you look at them within their genres and within their context, Ryan Coogler excels.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, because of Fruitvale Station and Creed and Black Panther, because those three films he made, it does whatever he does next, I will be excited for, because I think he is such a significant talent and a really effective storyteller and great character writer. And I have to say,
whereas a few of the last Marvel movies, I probably wouldn't have watched at all in cinemas if it weren't for this show and me having to review them.
But are you looking forward to Black Panther 2 because of Coogler?
I was actually going to, like, undeniably, I will be there when Black Panther 2 comes out.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you better, because we're going to do a goddamn show next week.
Yeah, it's right.
You better be watching it.
But I'm saying, if we weren't doing the podcast, I would still go watch it, even if it's 20 fucking pounds to go see a movie here in Denmark.
Well,
don't
there you
move
go.
to Denmark if you don't have a Danish job, guys. This is not a good financial decision.
Well, there you go, everybody. That will kind of wrap up the Ryan Coogler discussion. I think we all unanimously said Fruitvale Station. With, I throw Creed up there as well in very high praise. And like we said, everyone's seen Black Panther. Everyone knows. Everyone's seen it. Look, I'm sorry,
honestly,
everyone who's listening to this will have seen
seen
Black Panther. Yes,
hopefully. But if you haven't seen Black Panther and you feel like because we criticized it, like 100%, just fucking watch it. It's great.
It's still a great watch. It's still a great watch, and
we're very critical about it because of how important the message is, and the things that it gets wrong undermine that incredible job that it's doing, but like
Mhm.
it's fucking brilliant.
great.
Like when it comes to Marvel movies,
Mhm.
you're not gonna find anything
Yeah.
better.
But
like it's fantastic. Yeah.
no, it is true. You're right, and it's a shame that they wouldn't make a film like this anymore. But anyway, yes, now it is time for some reviews.
And now, reviews.
So, firstly, we have Watcher, which is directed and written by Chloe Okuno and stars Makika Monroe and Carl Glusman and Medina Ania. And so the story follows Julia and her husband, Francis, who moved to Bucharest for his work. And upon arrival, they soon discover there's a serial killer out in the loose here in Bucharest, which his name
Hate
is
that
the
when that
Spider.
happens.
I know, imagine moving country and there's
Yeah.
a serial killer on the loose. Yes, there's a serial killer out there. But simultaneously, Julia's just moved in and they live in this beautiful, beautiful flat looking over some other flats across the street or in the same complex. And what she soon discovers is that there is someone watching her all the time. There is a man across the complex watching her all the time. And so what you get here is this really effective, creepy film about voyeurism. And voyeurism has also really had a really interesting history in cinema. I mean, you could go back to Peeping Tom in the 50s, which was obviously a very controversial film upon release, which was panned, but to this day is considered one of the most, most what do you call it, defining pieces on voyeurism and horror voyeurism, and also quite a forward piece in the sense that it kind of looks more like the mental illness and trauma of a serial killer for something that came out in the 50s. That was quite progressive thinking, I think. And also you have, of course, like Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, which is quite iconic film to this day, is also regarded as one of the best films ever made, which obviously has the voyeur as a hero in a weird way. But yeah, it has a very interesting cinematic history. But here, voyeurism is also played with because, of course, you have someone's watching Julia at all times, basically. It's like, and soon as she discovers it and as she tells her husband about this, one of the first things he says about it is, well, what if he's just looking back at the person who's looking at him? And so it sort of plays with that whole notion about, we're looking at, usually voyeurism is the male gaze sort of thing where men looking at women and they sort of have the power and sort of it incites fear because they are watching them and therefore stalking them, and it adds a whole feeling of kind of dread and sort of powerlessness. But here it's kind of interesting because it plays with that power dynamic where it's like, wait, and it kind of psychologically messes with your head within the first kind of half where it's like, what if she's the voyeur? What if she's the person who is,
watching,
causing all this problem in the first place and he's simply just like staring back? But yeah, it's what we have is a really atmospheric and creepy thriller, I think. Whoever thought of putting this in Bucharest, and whoever was the location manager of this, by the way, fantastic job, because they managed to make a set of flats look really goddamn creepy. I don't know how they did that, but it's really quite interesting. We have you're looking at the window and it's like it's this horrible kind of dank, dark flat she's looking at, and it's like you did a great job there, whoever chose these flats.
There.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, there's this whole one of the standout scenes is this whole kind of really creepy scene inside a cinema theater where she like goes in to sort of evade her stalker, but then he comes in. Really sort of great atmospheric thing there.
That's funny. She's avoiding the watcher and she goes to somewhere where you sit and watch.
Yes, it's very good.
Fun metaphor there.
But also what's going on here is also, I think it's a really good exercise in a story about loneliness and alienation, because Julia, who's played by Makika Monroe, who you might know from It Follows, she's the lead in that, and that was sort of kind of her breakthrough role.
Yeah.
I know she's being followed. She's being followed again. What are the odds?
Yes.
Anyway,
I was wondering what I knew her for. That makes sense.
But yeah, I think it's a really good portrayal of sort of alienation, isolation, because she's sort of been dragged to this country in Bucharest in Romania. She's sort of been dragged here, for her husband, and then consequently she spends her days in the flat while he goes out to work, and she doesn't really have anyone. And it has this really great confounding, like, horrible sense of, like, you feel really alone, and now there's this horrible presence upon you at all times. It's sort of this really sort of horrible kind of overwhelming feeling, which I think it's a really good depiction of. And I think there's also, like, even if things like language barriers and that, there's a good scene where they're having dinner and she can't follow in on the jokes because she doesn't speak Romanian, and she has to constantly be asking what you're saying, and they're just like, oh yeah, it means this, blah blah,
so
sort of being shunned
so there's
off.
also like an isolation when it comes to like the cultural isolation.
The cultural
she's
aspect
separated from everyone around her, not
uh-huh.
just physically, like she has to stay alone in the flat, but like, you know, like she can't really connect to them.
No, exactly. I think that's a major thing. You feel this like confounding like loneliness throughout the whole picture. Is that you're in this, and it's a very cold looking picture, very purposely, like it has a very, I think, color graded to look quite cold, and set Romania during the winter, it's going to be very cold. But even like she does like spark up a little relationship with this woman played Irina, who's played by Medina Ania. Which is actually, their relationship is also, the way that sparked up is very natural, it's very good. I really like that. It didn't feel very forced at all. With any problems with it, I think it is quite predictable in the sense where it's like, you're kind of told, like, this is like, you're kind of like, oh, this is what's going on, and then it kind of like, just kind of follows through with that in a weird way. Like, there's not really many twists or surprises here. And what you get, like, what you see is what you get, in a sense where it's like, it's just sort of kind of tells you what's kind of going to happen, and it kind of just follows the plot as you kind of expect it to. But overall, I still think Watcher is a really, really effective piece. I think it's a really good suspenseful film, and one that should definitely be seen in the cinema. I think you just get that overwhelming sort of sense of dread and anxiety is sort of propelled through the cinematic thing. Yeah. And I think I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I think this was a really, really creepy piece, and one that was definitely good. That should have been released, I think, a couple weeks before Halloween, but they decided to release it after. Don't know why, it's just a bit silly.
It's a small production, probably they didn't want the competition,
Yes. But yeah, really solid film, really enjoyed it. Go give it a watch. Watch The Watcher, and not to be confused with Netflix's The Watcher. If there's any confusion there, I probably should have addressed that at the start. I've not seen The Watcher, so
The Watcher
don't know if that's any good.
It's a show.
Yeah,
this is a movie.
Yeah, the new cinematic universe run by James Gunn or something. It's the Watcher universe. I don't know.
That was a thing. Also, Chloe Okuno, has she done anything beforehand or after that you've seen, or?
Not that I've seen. No, not that I've seen.
Do you think it's someone we should keep an eye for?
Yeah, I think so. I think she this is really excellently well directed and well shot as well. Well done. And like I said, what this film is really about, it's about loneliness and alienation within in a different country, and that is really, it really, really sells you on that message. It really does a great job making you feel that way, actually. So yeah, The Watcher, not The Watcher, Watcher, Watcher. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, my other review today is Living. It's a film directed by Oliver Hermanus, and this is an English language adaptation and remake of Akira Kurosawa's Ikiru, which is also based off a novel by Leo Tolstoy, which is like The Death of Ivan Leitch or something. Yeah. Have either of you
Kurosawa? No,
yes,
I haven't.
Have you seen Ikiru? Any of you?
No, but I know that he really liked.
Not Akira.
No, he really liked adapting a lot of like Western stories. I feel like that's what made him such an international director, because he did Hamlet and stuff, and Macbeth, yeah, and stuff. But no, I haven't actually seen it. Would you recommend it?
Yes, I would. 100%. Akira is sort of like, it's always held in high regard. It's one of Kurosawa's best, and it's definitely his most sensitive picture. It's one of his most moving pieces. Because what it is, and this is also the same for this story, this Western remake, is that it basically follows the last few months of this man. In this version, it's Mr. Williams, as he's diagnosed with cancer and he has 6 months to live. And Ikiru is a very, very, I think it's one of the kind of the first film adaptations that kind of has that sort of that story about life affirming in a way, but also just kind of a very honest depiction of like wasted time and sort of having to actually do something with your life in its dying moments. And yeah, so like I said, this is an English language remake, English director, and also rewritten, or should I say, adapted by Kazu Ishiguro, who's a British-Japanese novelist, if you've ever heard of him.
Okay. So he has that understanding of both the original cultural background and the new setting.
Yes, because
so
we're
he's
set
kind of
here...
like bridging. Okay.
Like the original, we're set in the 50s. This is 50s London. And Mr. Williams, who's played by Bill Nye here, like I said, he worked at a community hall, the town's hall, sorry. And basically, it's his whole life has been about procrastination and just stalling, really. Because every time he's given some work to do in his office, like, oh, these women, like, this is the same for the original, and then this one, these women want to get rid of this bomb site and replace it with a playground for the children. And as the paperwork comes in, he just looks at it and passes it around each department of the office. He takes it to sewage, he takes it to Parks and Rec, he takes it to...
Why do it today when you can do it tomorrow?
Constantly. And then eventually when the file comes back to him, he just looks at it and says, well, it can do no harm sitting here, and just places it on a pile of a tower of paperwork, which is also the same thing in Ikiru. Of course, things change when he does get given the diagnosis that in this version he's blatantly told he has like 6 months to live, but in the Japanese version in Ikiru it's quite interesting because he isn't told that. He's told a lie. He's told he has like a stomach ulcer, but he knows that he has cancer, so he deduces it, which is quite interesting. But in this one he straight out it. But yeah, and look, going into this, I was really concerned. I remember this was on the London Film Festival slate, and I was like living, and I was like, saw the synopsis, like, this sounds awfully familiar, and I was like, oh, it's straight up, it's a Western remake of Ikiru, and I was like, I don't know, I'm not really interested.
Yes, we don't have the best track record with
and that's the thing, I'm like,
remakes of
it
Japanese
wasn't just
films.
doing a Western remake, it's doing it on one of Kurosawa's most iconic pieces as well. And so I
just remember watching the Western Old Boy, and I'm like,
yeah. So exactly, the track record for Western remakes isn't exactly great. So going into this, I was a bit like, but what we have here is actually, I was actually quite stunned at how well this is done. It's not only a great, like, I always say this about remakes. Remakes are really hard in the sense you have to sort of keep the sort of original story and identity of that original film, but also try and do something new with it in a weird way. Basically have a reason why this remake should exist.
Yeah, exactly, because you can always watch the original film.
No,
so
exactly. But what we get here, aesthetically, stylistically, is different to the original film. I mean, already placing it in England for a start and having it in colour is a very different thing to having it in Japan in the 1950s. From that, we have Bill Nye here, who's giving his absolute career best performance as a man, soul, who is, when he's given news and when he's sort of, he actually has this really, really sad scene where he meets an author at a boardwalk restaurant, and he's basically asking him what to do. In a sense, he's like, I don't know how to live. Like, I've spent so many years of my life just wasting in that chair. Like, I don't even know how to like spend how much money I have or what time to do with it left. Like, I don't know how to have fun. Basically, it's like that whole thing, and it's really interesting because what Bill Nye manages to convey is just this feeling of just lost. He's just so lost into who he is, but also he has this like really quiet and fragile sort of air about him that it's just everything he says, everything he does is so touching and heartfelt and just pulls on your heartstrings so well. And it's quite funny because coming off of like the original, which had Takashi Shimura, thank you. Shimura. His performance, he basically embodies anxiety and worry so well. Like, his face is just constant worry in that original film. But Bill Nye manages to not just copy that and just have a man who's just has anxiety. His is quite different. He's someone who just like, who feels at arm's length from everyone, who really is struggling to display and actually emote because he spent so much of his life just distant from everyone that even telling people is like almost an impossible task. Like, he wants to tell people, he wants to be able to say these things and do these things, but he is basically just so confined within himself that he can't do it. And from that, it's just such a so tragic. Bill Nye is just a really beautiful performance. Like, I can't really stress so much on it enough. This is the best performance I've seen so far this year. Like, really, really terrific stuff from him.
That is saying something, honestly, especially for Bill Nye.
Yeah, but also, like I said, like in terms of the visuals and the score, by the way, the score. Oh my god. In conjunction with the cinematography, I think what you have here is, like that original film, this really timeless story of when we're faced basically with the end. Is that only the time when we act, or are we just are we just constantly wasting time? What do we need to push us to make us a significance or something lasting? And it's also that thing where it's like, it's about the little victories in life. It's about the little things in life are the things that people will remember as well. You know, I like, it's so funny because as the opening credits happen, it's like, it's purposely done in like it looks like a 1950s Technicolor film. Like, it looks like old fashioned, and then it jumps into the sort of like modern sort of the modern aesthetic, like 2022 filming with like HD cameras and stuff like that. But like I said, it has a timeless air to it, it has a classical feel to it, and it's something that is really hard to pinpoint, but you just feel it in the story and the performances and the really well adapted writing. This is also 40 minutes shorter than the original film, so a significant amount of time is taken away, but none of it's lost, I don't think. And also, it does something, because there's something in the original film as well, where when you get to the third act, it does something that really throws you off guard. You're like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. And I thought this film, because I saw the runtime, I was like, wow, 40 minutes shorter, okay. I thought it was going to change that third act, but it doesn't, shockingly. It just does it a bit differently, obviously. Which I was like, okay, really interesting, because I think that third act is something that throws people off. I think it can detach people from the emotion. It can sort of disconnect them in a way from the emotional thrilling of the story, because you then do something that's quite jarring. But what that actually does is then that adds to the whole point of the story and the whole idea about leaving something behind, and this whole thing about how you can sort of be perceived once you're gone, sort of thing. But yeah, like there's specific moments that really made me tear up there. I mean, there's a scene where Bill Nye has to tell someone he has cancer, which is done just so, like, I can't even describe it, how sad and kind of tragic it's done. And then there's also a scene where he requests a song when he's drunk, and Bill Nye didn't realise he had such a good voice, but he does. He sings this song that is just so... Just like kind of actually still, like, I'm like quite stunned thinking about it. I was like, wow, like, it just leaves you really moved. That it's like, you know, like he's just feeling like, oh, this all coming to an end, and it's just, it may sound really, really weighty and heavy stuff, but it really is a great and charming sort of sweet piece. And I saw it with Madeline, and I saw it with my friend Tiernan, who didn't feel quite the same way. They didn't feel as moved by it or anything, but I was really impressed by this remake. I really think it's not one that tarnishes the original. It's not one
I want to ask the HL questions with any remake. Do you think, with the original still existing, and now this one, do you think these movies are both similar enough and different enough for both of them to be relevant?
Yes, quite simply, yes. I think absolutely watch Ikiru, and I think watch Living as well. I think Living is because they're two, like, one's is Japanese, one's in English, one's in color, one's in black and white. One is, you know, the whole, you know, aesthetic is completely different. The setting is completely different. It's 40 minutes shorter. They do different things. There's actually a fair bit more silence in the English language remake, which is quite strange. There's just the whole like, again, it goes through similar story beats and similar scenarios, but it does so in a different and unique way, and a heartfelt way that none of it's lost. So yeah, Living, loved it. This is Bill Nye's best performance, and I really hope he's up for the Oscars this year. Really, this is a 9 out of 10 from me. So
great praise.
There we go. Yes, but yeah. Guys, that'll wrap up today's show, and those were our reviews, and that was the end of our Ryan Coogler whole episode. So, thank you very much for listening, and thank you, Gonzalo.
It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome. Good to be back.
Yes, like we said, on next week's show, we'll be talking about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. This will be a full spoiler-filled and spoiler-free review of that film. We'll be going in depth of our feelings of it next week. So please stay tuned.
And maybe Kyle will sit through the Sherlock Holmes news movie just enough.
Yes.
So
No.
he can give us
Maybe
a
Kyle,
review.
Kyle, will you watch another 20 minutes so you can update us every week of what
Every
it
week
makes
is
20 minutes
Yeah,
were?
have
Yeah.
sex.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
how we
yeah.
finish it.
So just do
It'll
it.
have
be
a
a
big
new segment.
review
I watch 10
extravaganza.
minutes every week, and I
Yeah.
just give you a detailed description of those 10 minutes.
Have you actually watched the first one, by the way?
I did. I actually did watch the first one.
Yeah.
It came out in lockdown, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch
Yeah,
it in
nothing else to
lockdown.
watch, yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that'll wrap up today's show. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Please, I'm going to say it again, do all that usual shit. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, like our videos, follow us on the podcast on Spotify. Everything you do obviously helps the channel and the podcast. And like we always say, we give our opinions on Fruitvale Station, Black Panther, Creed, Living, and Watcher. But at the end of the day, those were just our unwanted opinion. Thank you very much.